A Papua New Guinea human rights lawyer says hundreds of people are still living on the streets of Port Moresby 2 years after being evicted from a squatter settlement. More than 11,000 people were forced out of the Morata New Block settlement in 2022 after a court decision. Lawyer Danny Gonal spoke with Don Wiseman and told him about their plight.
The people I'm representing, total a little over 11,000. More than 700 households which got evicted by order of court. The district court in Port Moresby issued eviction orders. Those orders were appealed to the National Court and eventually to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court confirmed the eviction orders issued by the Port Moresby District Court, upon which orders the people were evicted on the 12th of October 2022.
So since they've been evicted, have any of them found property that they can definitely call their own?
Those who were able to afford, they moved into accommodation they could afford. The others who were unable to afford it, and they're living on the streets of Port Moresby, yes.
How many would be living on the streets?
A little over 100 families. About 700 families were evicted, so many of them have been unemployed or either they were self-employed. And finding alternative accommodation in Port Moresby is very expensive. So I cannot give the exact number, but more than 300 families are affected. I think they're still looking for homes.
Have any gone back to their provinces?
Some of them have gone back to their provinces. Many still living in Port Moresby.
Well, your people are incensed that the government has provided money for the Bushwara settlers who were removed last month, but there was no money provided for the people from the Morata New Block.
The Bushwara settlement is a few kilometers away from Morata settlement. So the government, through the Ministry of Lands, only announced that 20 million kina would be provided for resettlement purposes, but that money is not yet forthcoming. And I think there would be certain criteria which the settlers have to meet before they're entitled to those monies. But that was only an announcement made. So we put forward the situation the Morata settlers are in, so that could be included as well in that proposal for resettlement.
20 million kina is not going to go far among tens of thousands of people, is it?
Yes, that is the amount that has been announced, but whether that is adequate to resettle all of those people who are affected is another issue.
Yes. What needs to happen, Danny, in your view? Clearly, it can't go on like this, can it? Regular evictions from settlements.
Yes. In Papua New Guinea, the laws we have, title is conclusive proof of ownership, and we have a Westminster system of democracy. At one stage, the government passed a legislation called Vagrancy Act, that is to stop people from coming into urban centers from the villages. And that law was brought to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court declared that unconstitutional. Unconstitutional because the Constitution of Papua New Guinea provides for freedom of movement. So that law was to restrict the movement of people, and the people, if they're citizens, they have a right to live wherever they want to within Papua New Guinea.
Now, just to go back to the letter that you have written to John Rosso, who's also the Minister of Lands, I think, saying that the New Morata people expected to be included in that 20 million kina. Have you heard back from him?
No, we have written to him. We have yet to receive a response from John Rosso, the Minister for Lands. And he's also the Deputy Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea.
In terms of resolving the issues, there's a lot of land in Papua New Guinea, isn't there? And a lot more could be done with it if the government was better organised. Is that fair?
Yes. If you look at the land system we have in Papua New Guinea, about 97% of the land are customary land, and only 3% are alienated land, meaning it is state land. So the land on which the settlers in Morata were evicted is part of the 3% of land in the country. And so our position is that the government fails because through the National Housing Commission, adequate housing should be provided for all citizens. And that is not the case. So what happens now, people come from the village settings in search of employment in the cities, including Port Moresby. And when they come, they find no housing. So people put off whatever accommodation they can put. So that is what happened in this scenario.
You're a lawyer, of course, so it's caveat emptor, isn't it? If people are buying land off someone who claims to own it, it's behoves them to find out just whether, in fact, those people are the owners. It's their failing, the settlers failing, if they buy land from people who are ripping them off.
Most of the land in Port Moresby are vacant land. It's land originally owned by customary landowners from the central province. Now it's a national capital district. So many people feel that they still own the land under customary ownership. And they did not realize that those lands were converted to state lists. So that is the problem we have here. And those original customary landowners sell the land to other people other Papua New Guineans who wish to settle on those vacant land. And that is the case in this matter now.
So are you expecting a positive outcome here?
Yes, I am the lawyer acting for the settlers in the Maratha case, which is similar to the Bushwara issue. We've already given notice to the state to sue for damages. In this case, there was a company who was issued. For the Maratha case, there was a company called Sixth Estate Limited who was issued a title over that land. And the people were already settling on that land. So the court found that because the company had title, the court ordered eviction against the settlers. And so we have submitted that the company may have the legal right, but the people living on that land and the owners of the land, including the state, did not say anything over the years. They put up improvements, so they acquired what is called an equitable right. And the equitable right is not as strong as a legal right, but as far as compensation to relocation issues are concerned, they're entitled to.
Compensation for the loss of their equitable rights.
Compensation for the properties they put up, or the eviction affected. So some of those settlers have put up permanent structures and they were dismantled, pulled down. So we are taking that issue to the national court, either for them to be compensated or for them to be relocated, as a responsibility to find land elsewhere to relocate those affected.
And that's a separate issue from the wanting to be tagged with this 20 million kina allocation. And that, how close are you to getting to court over that?
We already gave what is called a Section 5 notice, and that is a notice registering my client's interest to sue the state to recover for the losses they incurred as a result of that eviction. And if that is not done, the next possibility is to have them relocated. Relocation, land has to be located and land has to be identified, and that is impossible at this stage.